Okay, so in this section, we're going to study circles. Throughout this chapter, we're going to be looking at different geometric shapes and how those shapes are graphed using equations. And all of them are going to have a geometric definition first. And from that geometric definition, we can then derive a formula. The geometric definition for a circle is all the points equidistant from a single point called the center. So we're going to use that distance formula to help us do that. And the way that we usually think about this is we think about a single point on the graph, and we usually call that, I'm going to call it h comma k as our center point. And then we want all the points that are some distance away from it, and we're going to call that distance r for the radius. And we're going to give a generalized version of that point as x, y. And what we want to do is say, what is the relationship between x and y, some point that we're looking for, the center hk, and this distance r. And we do that by applying the distance formula. And so the distance formula says the distance between 2 points on a graph, in this case we know it to be r, the radius, is the square root of the difference in the x coordinates, x minus h squared, plus y minus k squared, the difference in the y's. And then from there, if we just square both sides, we can very easily see what the general form of a circle is. X minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared, where hk is the center. HK is the center, and r is the radius. Notice that it is r squared, so you're going to need to be able to take the square root of that to find out what the actual radius is. And then also notice that these are x minus h and y minus k, and so we're going to be doing the opposite of whatever the sign is inside those problems. So, very simply, if I have a problem like this where I've got a actually, let's do it on here. So if I've got a graph and it looks like this of a circle, and I'm asked to find the equation of that circle, what I need to know is hk, the center, and r, the radius. And on this picture, I can see that hk is going to be 4, -2. And then the radius, if I just count in 4 in any one of the cardinal directions, is going to be 4. So what's the equation? X minus h squared plus y minus k, so y minus a -2 squared equals 4 squared, which simplifies, and so this should be an x minus 4, sorry, to x minus 4 squared plus y plus 2 squared equals 4 squared, which is 16. So you got a something involving x squared, something involving y squared, and then you get your radius squared. And you're going to be asked to graph them, and so you might be given a problem like this. X plus 3 squared plus y minus 1 squared equals 12. Actually, we'll do 2 of them here. Let's do this one equals 9 first. Well, we start by identifying the center. The center, you do the opposite of whatever the signs are. So the center is going to be -3 for the x value. That's what's attached to the x. That's the h, what we call it. And then +1 for the y. So that's our center, -3, 1. And then your radius is the square root of 9. Remember, it's r squared. So to find the actual radius, we got to take the square root. And so that equals 3. And so to graph it, we need to go 3 directions. And the easiest way to do this is to do it in the cardinal directions, as I call it, which means up, down, left, right, north, south, east, west, whatever you want to think about it. So we're going to go up 3 to here, up 3 to here, up 3 to here, and up 3 to here, doing our best then to draw it by getting it the curvature that we know that a circle looks like. And that is the graph of x plus 3 squared plus y minus 1 squared equals 9. Now, you might be given one like this, where you've got x minus 5 squared, y minus plus 2 squared equals 12. So we start by identifying the center of 5, -2. That goes here. And then your radius is the square root of 12. Well, that is going to be approximately, it's, the square root of 9 is 3, the square root of 16 is 4. So it's around 3.5. And so whenever you've got one that's irrational, like the square root of 12, where you can't actually take the square root and get a value, you just do your best to estimate it. Make sure that you're within an integer, like kind of basically a half integer, I guess would be the best way to say it. And so I need to go 3.5 or so up, 3.5 or so over, 3.5 or so down, 3.5 or so this way, and it ends up looking like that. That's the graph of that circle. Okay, then not always are you going to be given it in the nice form. And so you might be given it to look like this, where you've got x squared plus y squared plus 10x minus 4y plus 20 equals 0. And so you're given this equation and you're asked to graph it. Well, what we're going to start paying close attention to are what the coefficients of the x squared and the y squared are. If those coefficients, when they're put on the same side, are the same, then it will be a circle. And so this is going to be a circle. Now, remember, looking back at the circle, it's got something squared plus something squared. So to be able to use what we've learned about this, we have to create these squares, which we've had experience doing, called completing the square. So what I usually do is go ahead and rewrite it. X squared plus 10x plus something is going to complete the square for the x's. And then y squared minus 4y plus something is going to complete the square for the y's. And then I've got minus 20 on the other side. Remember, to complete the square, you take half the middle term. So half of 10 is 5. Square it, and you get 25. Half of -4 is -2. Squared is +4. We remember that we are not allowed to just add something to one side. So we can't just add 25 and add 4. We have to add them to the other side as well. So when we simplify, we factor. This is x plus 5 squared, as we intended it to be. Y minus 2 squared equals 9. And so now we've got it in a form where we can go through and graph it by saying that the center is -5, 2, radius 3, because the square root of 9 is 3, and it looks something like this. So you got to be able to go through and complete the square to solve these. A little bit more complicated one would be something that looks like this, where you have 3x squared plus 3y squared minus 6x plus 24y plus 24 equals 0. Well, that's because you've got these 3's in front of here. But remember, when we learned to complete the square when we studied quadratics, we couldn't complete it if we had a coefficient in front of the x term. And so what we do on one of these is we just divide through by 3, and we get x squared plus y squared minus 2x plus 8y plus 8 equals 0. Now we can go through and complete the square. So x squared minus 2x plus something, y squared plus 8y plus something equals -8. Half of 2 is 1, 1 squared is 1, half of 8 is 4, 4 squared is 16. So we're going to add 1 and add 16. And so that gives me x minus 1 squared plus y plus 4 squared equals 9. So we get a center of 1, -4, and a radius of 3. And so that is the circle that is the graph of that equation.